Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Today, we're plunging into a topic that's really reshaping economies and lives across an incredibly dynamic part of the world. The East Asia and Pacific region, or EAP, our focus. It's the profound impact of new technologies, think industrial robots, artificial intelligence, and, well, the explosion of digital platforms on EAP's rapidly evolving labor markets. Our journey today is guided by a really comprehensive World Bank book titled Future Jobs. Now, this report takes a detailed, data-driven look at how work is changing in this vibrant, diverse part of the world. Our mission is pretty clear: to unpack the most important and sometimes surprising findings from this report. We want to offer you a shortcut, really, to understanding what these technological shifts truly mean for jobs, for wages, and for the entire future of work in the EAP region. We want you to walk away truly well-informed.
Yeah, and it's important to set the stage here because the EAP region isn't just a major economic powerhouse. It's a critical, almost like a laboratory case study for understanding global labor market trends. Its unique trajectory, the rapid growth, and incredibly diverse economies. They offer a really rich canvas for observing how technology intersects with, well, human endeavor.
Okay, so to really grasp these technological shifts, the report first kind of sets the scene by revealing EAP's current labor market landscape. And it's full of fascinating contradictions, starting with 10 stylized facts.
Hmm.
Let's begin with the overall employment picture. The report notes that EAP actually boasts a higher employment to working age population ratio than most other developing economies. That sounds like great news, right? But it's not uniform. Countries like Mongolia, China, Thailand, and Vietnam are already facing the challenge of aging and shrinking working age populations.
Right. And this immediately highlights a crucial tension. We see this strong, active workforce that has, undeniably fueled much of the region's economic success. Yet there's this looming demographic challenge as populations age. The implications for long-term labor supply and the very structure of these economies are, well, pretty significant.
Okay, beyond the overall employment picture, the report also digs into how people are actually earning. And here's a stat that might genuinely surprise you. Wage growth in EAP hasn't just been strong, it's actually outpaced labor productivity growth. That sounds like fantastic news for salaried workers, but is there a catch?
Well, there is a nuance. While it is certainly positive for those earning wages, it's important to remember a data limitation here. The earnings for the self-employed, and they account for about half of total employment across the region, those earnings are often not fully captured in these figures. So while impressive, it doesn't paint the complete picture for everyone.
Okay, right. Let's delve deeper then into specific demographic groups, because the picture varies quite a bit. The report reveals that younger workers, those aged 15 to 24, are struggling more to find jobs. We're seeing higher unemployment rates for them compared to prime-age adults, especially in places like China and Indonesia. Interestingly, though, unemployment is lowest among older workers, 55 to 64, though their overall labor force participation tends to be lower.
Hmm. And this really raises an important question. How can EAP countries truly harness the full potential of their entire workforce, especially with these demographic shifts and existing gender-related challenges? For instance, the report highlights that labor force participation rates among women in EAP, while higher than in other developing regions, are still significantly lower than men's. And here's the striking part. They've shown very little improvement in most countries over the last decade. Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines are sort of exceptions, but generally, it's often hindered by deep-seated social and cultural norms, biases, even regulations. The report suggests that just closing these gaps could raise the employed share by 3 to 5 percentage points.
Wow, that's a huge economic opportunity right there.
Absolutely. It's a massive untapped resource. Yeah.
And compounding that, the report also points out that while the gender wage gap has narrowed in most countries, Indonesia being an exception where it hasn't, women still, unfortunately, earn less than men across the board. Okay. Shifting gears now to skills and the broader structural changes happening in the EAP labor market. The report confirms educational attainment has improved across EAP, which is great. However, a majority of the workforce in many countries still lacks the skills needed for a modern, tech-driven economy. This is where the report uses a really powerful phrase: learning poverty. It means over half of 10-year-olds in 14 of 22 middle-income countries can't even read age-appropriate material. That's just a fundamental hurdle.
It really is. It indicates a severe bottleneck in developing the foundational human capital needed for a modern economy. And it's critical because, as you said, there's this growing demand for digital and, importantly, socio-emotional skills.
That's right. And despite that urgent need for skills, the report shows a fascinating trend. the wage premium for skills is actually shrinking. Now, this might seem counterintuitive.
Given all the talk about upskilling.
Exactly. However, well-educated workers still earn significantly more, like those with tertiary education earn 40 to 80% more than those with primary or some secondary. High school diplomas, while helpful, add a more modest 10 to 40%. So while the premium might be shrinking a bit, education remains a powerful differentiator.
Absolutely. It still pays off.
And this leads us to the very structure of employment. The report underscores a significant structural shift. Employment has largely moved from agriculture, but mainly into low-earning service sectors. Think trade, hospitality, construction, rather than the higher-earning service sectors we might expect.
Right. And what's particularly interesting, given EAP's strong integration into global manufacturing, is that this region has actually delayed the decline in manufacturing employment seen elsewhere. In fact, countries like Cambodia and Vietnam have even seen increases. This really goes against that common narrative about global deindustrialization.
Yeah, that's quite a counter-narrative.
Indeed. It illustrates EAP's distinct development path, often driven by its comparative advantage in manufacturing. And just to round out this initial snapshot, the report notes that wages are generally converging across sectors and occupations, with one crucial exception: ICT and technical professionals. Here, already high wages are actually growing even faster. So there's a clear premium for specialized tech talent.
Okay, so with that foundational understanding of EAP's labor market, here's where it gets really interesting. How are these new technologies actually affecting the trends we've just laid out? Let's tackle the big one first: industrial robots. When we talk about robots and jobs, there are typically two opposing forces, right? The displacement effect, where robots take over tasks, and the scale effect, where robots boost productivity, leading to expanded production and maybe creating new jobs. Many assume displacement wins out.
And that's precisely what makes the EAP region so compelling. Because in EAP, robot adoption has, well, surprisingly, led to an increase in manufacturing employment overall. This is a crucial finding. It often gets overlooked in the broader narrative about automation, especially coming from developed countries where displacement effects are often more prominent. The report explains that in 5 Asian countries, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand, Vietnam, between 2018 and 2022, robots did displace an estimated 1.4 million low-skilled formal workers. That's about 3.3%. But critically, they simultaneously created 2 million jobs, that's 4.3% for skilled formal workers. This net gain is largely due to productivity gains leading to expanded production scale, often for global markets.
Wow, so a net positive in jobs, driven by scale. A vivid example of this is Vietnam, right? It's seen rapid robot adoption in its high-value, trade-oriented manufacturing sectors. And this has specifically benefited skilled formal workers and younger workers, those aged 15 to 32, in both employment and wages. Even while, as you noted, it did negatively impact some low-skilled formal workers. So it's not a blanket positive, but an overall net gain in employment.
Exactly, and it's important to point out the nuance here. This positive overall employment trend in EAP due to robots differs from what we often see in some developed countries. A key factor seems to be economic viability, not just technical feasibility. In EAP, especially in lower-wage countries, the cost of labor can still be competitive enough to limit automation. It just makes it less economically attractive to replace certain jobs with robots compared to a higher-wage economy.
That makes sense. Okay, now let's turn to artificial intelligence, AI. This is often the technology that sparks the most questions, perhaps the most anxiety. AI's potential is vast. It can automate, complement, even create tasks, especially across a wide range of cognitive functions, moving far beyond just routine actions.
And AI adoption trends reflect this potential. It's rapidly increasing among both individuals and firms, with large firms and tech-intensive sectors really leading the way. Just to give you a sense of scale, look at the U.S. Nearly 40% of adults had used generative AI by August 2024, with about 28% using it for work-related tasks. And this adoption is particularly high among younger, more educated, and higher-income workers.
Okay, so given that global context, what does this mean for EAP? The report emphasizes that AI exposure in EAP is overall relatively low still. That's largely due to the prevalence of manual tasks across the region. However, many routine cognitive jobs could indeed be negatively affected.
Right. And what the report uncovers here is the unequal exposure to AI within EAP. Women, especially in Malaysia and the Philippines, are actually more exposed. That's because their jobs tend to involve more cognitive and routine tasks. Higher educational attainment is also linked to greater AI exposure. But here's a really interesting contrast. Older workers in EAP are more exposed to automation-thick robots in manufacturing, but less exposed to AI. That's kind of the opposite of what's often observed in developed countries. It really highlights how different technologies impact different demographics.
That is interesting. So with all that in mind, what does this actually mean for earnings and employment right now? What's the bottom line? The report finds that greater AI exposure is, intriguingly, associated with lower earnings in most EAP countries, even though its impact on aggregate employment changes isn't yet significant. So lower pay associated with AI exposure.
Yeah, it's a bit counterintuitive, perhaps, but this negative correlation with earnings suggests that while AI penetration is still nascent in the region, it's already impacting jobs. It's likely through the nature of tasks involved. AI tends to automate routine cognitive tasks, and those jobs might see downward pressure on wages. Or perhaps workers are shifting to tasks that are harder to automate but maybe also lower paying. It's something we need to watch closely.
Definitely. Okay, so beyond industrial robots and AI, the broader digital transformation, and particularly through digital technologies and platforms, is also rapidly reshaping work. The good news here is that generally, working with digital technologies leads to positive labor outcomes, like higher wage premiums.
Yeah.
We see this notably in Malaysia, the Philippines, and Thailand.
And here's a truly surprising insight from the report. The benefit tends to be larger among women. In some cases, like Indonesia and Vietnam, it's even twice as large.
Twice as large for women, that's incredible.
It is. It suggests digital transformation isn't just a powerful economic tool, but also potentially a force for gender equity in the workforce, which is a fantastic finding.
That's a huge insight. Let's dig into Indonesia's experience with these digital-intensive jobs a bit more. Workers in both formal and informal sectors there earn significantly more when they embrace digital tools. Here's a fascinating detail. Informal digital workers in Indonesia earn almost as much as non-digital workers in the formal sector.
Yeah, think about that. It suggests digitalization might actually be shrinking the wage gap between the formal and informal sectors.
Yeah.
That's a potentially massive structural shift for a developing economy.
Absolutely.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, we see the global rise of digital platforms. It's important to note that a third of the world's top 100 digital platform firms are headquartered right here in EAP, second only to the U.S. The platform economy itself reached between, 5 and 7% of GDP in most EAP countries in 2023. So this isn't a fringe activity. It's a significant part of the economic landscape now.
So how exactly do these platforms affect employment? On one hand, they obviously enhance intermediation efficiency, make matching easier, and they can accelerate automation and AI adoption. But they also crucially facilitate labor force participation and better task matching for individuals.
True, but the employment effects observed have been mixed, which is worth noting. It's not all one direction. In the Philippines, for example, platforms seem to show more of a labor-saving effect, with firms substituting internal employment with external services from the platform. But then you look at Vietnam, and there's evidence of a strong positive scale effect, leading to increased firm employment and growth. So it really illustrates there isn't a one-size-fits-all outcome.
Right. Different contexts matter. And it's not just about traditional employment, is it? Digital platforms have created significant entrepreneurial opportunities for small businesses and self-employed workers, including women. The report uses the specific example of ride-hailing in Vietnam. Formal taxi drivers didn't see durable benefits, apparently, but informal motorbike drivers saw a 20% increase in earnings. This suggests a phenomenon maybe of informalization, where work shifts to the gig economy, but not necessarily with negative outcomes, maybe even boosting livelihoods for many.
Precisely. It's complex, but it shows platforms can provide new avenues, particularly for those in the informal sector.
Okay, so pulling it all together, what does this all mean for the bigger picture? How do these technologies affect the entire economy? And crucially, what policy levers are needed to navigate this new landscape? The report explains 3 channels of interdependence: the job-displacing substitution effect, the job-creating demand effect, and then cross-sectoral reallocation.
And what's truly compelling here is EAP's unique trajectory when viewed through these lenses. For example, agricultural mechanization has indeed shrunk farm employment, but the data suggests this was mostly due to the pull of higher manufacturing wages, not direct displacement by machines within agriculture itself. People left for better jobs. And again, unlike many global trends, developing EAP countries have actually seen their industrial employment share continue to rise, even with increased robot adoption. Think China and Vietnam.
Still rising, even with robots.
Yeah. It's consistent with local employment growth driven by EAP's comparative advantage in manufacturing. It truly challenges that common notion that industrialization inevitably leads to a decline in manufacturing jobs once automation kicks in.
So this implies a critical future shift then?
Yeah.
A dynamic services sector will be absolutely essential for future productive employment, especially with AI's massive potential in services.
Exactly. Manufacturing has been the engine, but services will likely need to play a much bigger role going forward.
Okay, so the report proposes 4 key policy areas to harness these profound changes. Let's dive into them. Starting with number 1, equipping the workforce with the necessary skills. And that begins right at the foundation, basic literacy and numeracy. We touched on that learning poverty challenge earlier. Over half of 10-year-olds in many middle-income EAP countries can't read age-appropriate material. That's a fundamental hurdle.
It all starts with the basics, doesn't it? You can't build higher skills without that foundation. Beyond that foundational layer, digital skills are, well, undeniably vital for an increasingly digitalized workplace. Countries like Japan, Korea, and Singapore offer good examples. They integrate digital skills into curricula early on, use digital tools extensively in education, and provide continuous teacher training. Locally, you see efforts like the Philippines Digital Workforce Competitiveness Act and their National AI Strategy Roadmap. These are promising steps to build this capacity.
Then there are the socio-emotional skills, things like grit, self-regulation, creativity, empathy. The report emphasizes their comparative advantage over machines. These are uniquely human strengths.
And importantly, these skills are teachable. It's not just something you're born with. Evidence from Colombia shows integrated learning programs can foster them. Indonesia has seen positive impacts on attitudes and even test scores from interventions promoting a growth mindset. Turkey has had success nurturing curiosity in children. So, investing in these human-centric skills really pays dividends.
Makes sense. And finally, under skills, we need advanced technical skills, particularly in STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, and math.
Right. And the challenge here is the scarcity of STEM graduates in most EAP countries. Malaysia is a bit of an exception, but generally, there's a significant talent shortage. But the report does highlight success stories. Korea's Meister high schools, for instance, partner directly with industry giants like Hyundai and Samsung. They provide customized vocational training that aligns directly with what industry needs. China and India have also rapidly expanded their engineering workforce for strategic investments and deep industry collaboration. But again, this underscores the critical importance of that strong foundational education to enable higher-level skill acquisition later on. You need the basics first.
Okay, policy area number 2, facilitating labor and capital mobility. Why is this so crucial? Well, it's absolutely essential for displaced workers to find new opportunities and for resources, people, and money to be reallocated efficiently across the entire economy as things change.
Indeed. But there are significant impediments in many EAP countries. Things like poor job information, issues in the housing market making it hard to move, rigid labor market rules, and a lack of portable benefits that move with the worker. And the report cites specific examples like China's Hukou system and Vietnam's Hocao system. These are household registration systems. And they often tie social benefits and access to services like schools and healthcare to your place of birth. This effectively hinders rural-urban migration and can trap people in lower productivity jobs.
But digital technologies can actually be part of the solution here, can't they? Things like gig economy apps, online job boards, Upwork, Freelancer, they expand access to jobs globally. The report suggests this leads to higher earnings and greater financial independence, especially for women. Even simple mobile phones have helped farmers by disseminating critical information that increases yields. So digital tools can improve mobility of information, if not always people physically.
That's a good point. Digital can bridge some of those gaps.
Okay, the third policy area is removing factor price distortions. This sounds a bit technical.
It basically means avoiding policies that inadvertently make capital like robots or software relatively cheaper than labor. If you subsidize capital too much or tax labor too heavily, you essentially encourage companies to replace people with machines maybe too quickly, even when it might not be the best thing for the broader labor market or economy.
Got it. Keep the playing field level between labor and capital. And finally, the fourth area, expanding social protection to the informal sector. This seems increasingly important, especially with the rise of gig workers and the platform economy.
Hugely important. And what's truly innovative here are the new approaches emerging across the region and globally. Colombia, for instance, offers subsidies and uses tax nudges to encourage pension savings for informal workers. India has its eShram portal for registration and reminders, helping extend Social Security benefits. Malaysia has that interesting government grab partnership with matching contributions for retirement savings for gig workers. And you even see examples like Denmark, with a private platform-led tiered system where consistent gig workers can eventually gain employee status and access benefits. These are practical, impactful solutions being tried out.
That's really encouraging to see that innovation in social protection. So this deep dive truly highlights the complexity, the dynamism of technological change in the EAP labor market. It's clearly a story of both immense challenge and profound opportunity, and really a testament to the region's unique path.
Absolutely. If we connect this back to the bigger picture, the data unequivocally shows EAP countries have often defied conventional wisdom in their industrialization and technology adoption paths. As we move forward, the strategic development of human capital, particularly those unique socio-emotional skills and advanced technical skills that truly complement technology, not just compete with it, that will be absolutely key to sustaining prosperity. It's really about more than just adapting to technology. It's about strategically shaping a future where human ingenuity and technological advancement can work in powerful synergy, hopefully for everyone.
A powerful closing thought. So what stands out to you from this deep dive? How might these fascinating trends, robots creating jobs, AI impacting earnings, platforms changing work, how might they impact your own work or the industries you follow? We encourage you to reflect on these insights and consider how they might shape the world around you.